boldly engaging the mindless propaganda of our time, apparently with reason. This is Rage of the Age.
This is Rage of the Age, and we have with us today a successful CEO and president for 25 years. He's an entrepreneur of 4 businesses. He's a former manager of the Blank Park Zoo. He is the author of 2 books, The $80 Billion Gamble and Dare to Dream, Dare to Act. He led the team that busted the largest lottery fraud in U.S. history, and he's given away over $1 billion. I want to introduce to you today Terry Rich. Terry, welcome to the show.
Absolute pleasure to be here. It's going to be a fun day.
So you led the team that busted the largest lottery fraud in U.S. history, and as you put it, has something to do with a ticket, a hot dog, and Bigfoot all tied into one here.
It was absolutely a crazy story. Many people work in organizations that have people who they trust, who you would think would never create fraud. Well, I worked for the lottery in 17 states. Actually, all the states in the United States work together, pool their money together to do things like Powerball or other smaller type games. And the gentleman we busted was a part of that organization that was a vendor organization, not actually the Iowa lottery. And he just decided to program a computer that drew the numbers so that he had a better chance of winning. And we busted it. It was really crazy.
Wow. If I understand this right, I've always understood that if you were like somehow involved with the lottery, you weren't allowed to play, right?
That's right. But it's just like if you are a church secretary, you really aren't allowed to take it out of the collection bin either. But I found in all the research in busting this case is that there are 3 reasons people create fraud. Now, the first one's financial. So everybody wants more money. Everybody needs more money, or maybe they get into a gambling problem, a drug problem, a divorce, or kids are running up the credit cards. But the second one is opportunity. And if someone has all the keys to the kingdom, if back to a church secretary writes the POs, purchase orders, and also writes the checks, they have all the keys to the kingdom. And that's what this gentleman had. He had the keys to be able to write the program, oversee the program that drew the numbers, and that sort of thing. But the final one, which is the toughest as a supervisor, as a CEO or a manager to oversee, is the leg of rationale. At what point, even though you have the opportunity, think about a booster club. If you're a member of an athletic club, booster club, and it's a big game and you're in charge of collecting the money and all that, if you just start putting money in your pocket so nobody steals locally, at what point do you rationalize, they're working me too hard tonight and I should get $5 to buy my own meal on the way home or a drink on the way home? So the rationalization is the toughest one to control. And that's the little devil or angel on your shoulder telling you, should I really do this? And if you have the opportunity squelched by having someone auditing, someone writing the check, and the other person okaying the purchase order, the checks and balances, then you eliminate and thwart down the rationalization, or even if you have a financial need, that you don't have that fraud. Unfortunately, all 3 of those played into this big caper, and we busted the gentleman on the fraud.
But he still had to turn in a ticket at some point, right? How do you claim a ticket that you can't buy?
Yeah, he can't buy it, but he can buy it. I mean, he went in and bought it, but he disguised himself. He put on a black hoodie, covered his face. He thought he had it. Here's the crazy part. Sometimes you're just unlucky. I think God looks down and says, wait a minute, you're not supposed to do this. You're going to screw up here. And here's what he did. He went in and bought a ticket in a state. Some states don't require you can be anonymous to claim a ticket. But he went into a convenience store to buy a ticket that had video, and a lot have video. So he covered his face and covered also, you really couldn't tell who it was. But it also was recording audio. At the time, only 4 convenience stores out of 2,400 recorded both video and audio. And he was unlucky enough to go into that store and do it. The second piece that he had that was unlucky was he bought a couple of hot dogs. Now, this guy's 300 or 400 pounds. And he bought 2 hot dogs. Now, if he hadn't bought 2 hot dogs, we wouldn't have cracked the case, because when he bought the hot dogs, it was recorded. He bought the hot dogs. His voice was recorded. And ultimately, when we went to trial, his brother sat on the stand and said, wait a minute, that ain't my brother. He don't like hot dogs. Well, come to find out, an FBI agent, that was such a crazy thing that he said on the stand that it got reported by Associated Press. It was then back at his brother who lived in Texas had gotten his local newspaper, and an FBI agent said, wait a minute, his brother's the guy we investigated for money laundering because he had all this cash. I better call that up to the investigators in Iowa. And lo and behold, we figured out his brother was dumb enough to come up and give him a character reference, yet he was involved in the scandal and had cashed some of the tickets. And all of the cash that he had alerted the FBI. And so a little secret here, if you're ever going to create any kind of fraud, don't use social media. That's the first place the cops go to. Facebook, LinkedIn, and all your cell phone records.
Yeah.
So we took all of their contacts and all three of those items and immediately cross-referenced those to all winners of $600 or more in most of the U.S. states. Bingo. Wow. We had 6 jackpots right away. But here's where it really gets interesting. His brother, who was the testifying, guess what? He loved to hunt Bigfoot. And the only reason that the FBI found him and he told them that he had won a lottery in Colorado, which tied it into a national case.
Yeah.
He was out hunting Bigfoot, was in a tree stand, fell out of the tree stand, and was in the hospital under a morphine drip when they went in to ask him about the money laundering. So if we hadn't had Sasquatch in the mix, we'd have never solved this lottery case.
Wow. I saw some video we were talking about this before, that you had lawyers and other people involved trying to get a piece of the action somehow on the periphery. How does that work?
Well, think about as a public official, lawsuits are prevalent in the public realm. We see that whether it's politics, whatever. But once we began to investigate, that's why we call it the $80 billion gamble. In the United States, more money spent on lotteries than they're spent on all the sports income, all the music income, and all the movie income combined. Wow. Most people don't realize how much money is spent on gambling. People love to gamble. Well, as we went into this, all my counterparts kept saying, hey, this is an Iowa case. They didn't realize how big a national case it was going to turn out to. So just shut up, be quiet, because you're gambling with our $80 billion industry. And lotteries raise a lot of money for great causes. So as we got into it, they were worried that we would get sued by all sorts of folks, and then people wouldn't want to play because they thought every game was fixed. We had, in fact, when it was all said and done, 2 lawsuits that came out of this. So I said, and this is really the best part of living in Iowa, our governor kept saying, I don't care what it costs, investigate this thing, make sure the game's fair and honest. I don't want lotteries in our state unless they're fair and honest. So he gave us full carte blanche just to say, go after it. But the idea of going after these lent itself to a lot of people. First off, when we couldn't find the winner initially, it took 9 months before they tried to cash it because they were trying to figure out, I wasn't supposed to buy this. How do I cash it? We had everybody coming in and said, hey, I think the clerk stole it from me. Or, they started hiring lawyers saying that was my ticket. And we could verify there's a lot of security on lottery tickets. It's tough to pull one over that way. But then the person that won the jackpot right after Eddie Tipton claimed, and we didn't pay him, his jackpot, once they forgave the jackpot, they said, okay, we don't want it because our client doesn't want the publicity. Ding, 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 something's up. Immediately after that, 3 or 4 months, the next jackpot rolled and somebody won that one. And they started thinking a few years later, hey, why shouldn't I have gotten Eddie's money plus my money? Because if it would have rolled, I should have gotten everything. So that was one lawsuit, and that one was tough. It was settled for a heck of a lot less than what that total was, because the bigger the jackpot, more people play, the more odds you're going to get hit. So the odds of him actually winning more money than what he won, he probably would have won less because the jackpot would have been small at that point, probably pretty small. The second one was a class action lawsuit. What that said was, look, if he rigged it, and we know the dates that he rigged it, once a year he could have rigged jackpots in these states. Everybody who played on those dates should get their money back, $1, $2. Well, if you add all of those years together and everybody that played, that's a lot of money. So they ultimately settled again for a pretty small amount. But if you thought you bought a ticket, or if you kept your tickets from 10 years ago of your losing tickets, you were able to send it in and get $2 back, or you could sign an affidavit that you bought one. So, few people, they had people who did it, but few people bought it. But those were the 2 lawsuits that came out of it. But the amount of money that cost the industry versus the $80 billion we were gambling with by protecting the integrity was minuscule.
So the 80 billion, is that what the jackpot was worth?
Good point. The 80 billion is how much money is spent each and every year on lotteries in America. Again, just to put that in perspective, about 9 or 10 billion are spent on music each year, buying the CDs and all the music stuff. About $11 billion is NFL or the sports betting, or excuse me, 20 billion is sports and 11 billion is the movies, all the movies combined. So you add all those together, you still aren't at $80 billion. So it was a gamble that if we messed up in our little state in this investigation, and New York people thought, hey, those games all the lottery games are rigged, we were gambling with a lot of money.
The fear was it'd be a drop in lottery sales?
Be a drop in lottery sales, yeah. So we were gambling that people would sell less, which means their profits to the state given to education and public service and all that lotteries are set up. And remember, lotteries were big in the 1800s, and Louisiana had a major fraud, and they shut lotteries down in the U.S. They came back in the 1950s, and the whole theory was that they wanted the games state by state to be fair and honest versus the mafia or organized crime running numbers, which was really heavy on the East Coast during the time.
Right. Because I know, like, even in, like, say, a simple bingo game or like a raffle ticket, if like someone gets a hint that it was rigged or something was wrong with their ticket, they get absolutely livid.
Absolutely.
I can imagine on a scale.
Yeah. And why would you play? Yeah. And
right.
I think what was weird to me is every time there was a negative article or there was a story about Eddie Tipton's trial, we sold more tickets, which always blew me away. Well, why would that be? Well, we've theorized that people say, well, they are watching it really close and they're very open about investigating it. So I'd rather play them. They must be more fair and honest than playing online in Malta, trying to play poker in Malta, not knowing, how that game is run.
I don't know what odds are better, having audio in Iowa when you're in the store or winning the lottery ticket.
Yeah.
But I guess the idea is I want to know I at least have a chance.
That's
for
right.
when I enter, that's not rigged.
The old Jim Carrey saying, so you say there's a chance, that's for sure. That's what people play for. I tell everybody, even as the lottery director, as a public official, a lot of money's raised, and some states really pushed their lottery officials to sell as much as they could. But that's not the theory. A good official would maximize sales, but make sure you don't over promote and over promise, because I could have doubled the sales easily in any given year. But you're not in it. You want people to play with their discretionary dollars, not with their food dollars for this evening's meal.
So how long did it take to wrap up this whole case then? Was this like a lengthy thing?
It was almost 7 years from the time that he bought the ticket to the time and actually he had another 10 years because he had 4 other jackpots that he actually did claim money for his brother and his best friend. And so it took about 15 years, but if we hadn't done it, I'm absolutely convinced he'd still be doing it. But, greed is a weird thing I learned in all of this. He got by with it with a little $700,000 jackpot in Wisconsin and $800,000 jackpot in Colorado. But he went after the big kahuna when he went after ours. It was $16.5 million.
Wow.
And if he'd have just gone after the 600s, thousands, he probably would still be doing it today. But it's back to the lesson of any organization that you deal with or your own company. Make sure you have checks and balances, the rule of 2. One person writes the PO, have another person sign the check. Make sure 2 people are looking at everything so that a person doesn't have, if they have the financial need, they don't have all the opportunity, all the keys to the kingdom, all the keys to be able to steal. And finally, at some point, something happens in life to everybody. You could be the best employee of the world when you start with someone, but all it takes is one major financial problem, divorce, booze, gambling, coronavirus, and the rationale, then a good employee can go bad. So that's why you want the oversight.
Yes. Speaking of oversight now, let's take this into the realm of public officials and fraud and things like this. We were just talking before this, and you were mentioning I guess some of this applies into this realm as well. Is this a big problem in the public officials?
I think that the image of a public official is absolutely awful. Everyone hates the government, and through any political campaign, it gets even worse. I watched a documentary called "Where's My Roy Cohn," and I think that's the guy that really started the negative stuff. Of somebody says, "Hey, you're stealing $2," you say back to him, "No, you're stealing $2. I'm going to sue you," and win at all costs is what I learned through that documentary. And kind of feels like that in our because it seems like that's what's been working for people to get elected, which is just absolutely crazy. But what I personally learned, I was a public official. I became them. That's kind of scary because I hated the government at the time too. What I found is that, let's talk about this case, is that the more I pushed, the more I did it, people said, just forget about it. It'll go away. Just pay it. Just pay that. We don't know who it is, but you're going to hurt us. You're gambling with $80 billion. Is that it would have been a lot easier just to pay it. I would have won a lot more industry awards. I could have taken a lot more leadership positions, but I was actually I lost half my friends because they said, you're way too vocal in this. And if we hadn't been, which, as you might be able to tell, love to talk and love the media. I used what my strengths were to get the word out to try to bust this guy and put the team together to bust it. And, it really, as I look back, did I really win? So my lesson in all of that is, as you have a state auditor, as you have a business manager in your organization or whatever, once in a while, thank them. We always give the awards to the salespeople and CEOs and the people. Customer service is big too, but those that once in a while blow the whistle, hey, you didn't send a receipt in with your travel expense report. Everybody says, well, why are you worrying about that? Those kinds of checks and balances are really important, and you've got to appreciate more the people who do that. Because if we don't give recognition, then it's too easy. Just like a politician, they get completely beat up, and they see other people that got away with it. What's the harm? At what time do you rationalize that it's okay to bend the rules? Now, nothing's ever black and white. I can't think of a decision we all make that really it's absolute yes or absolute no. And so then it's back to the rationalization of trying to keep and have policies and procedures. And then also within an organization, you have rules to say that if you're caught stealing or if you do anything like this, you're immediately fired, just so there is some oversight to keep the little devil or angel at bay here on the shoulder.
So in what capacity were you a public official?
I reported directly to the governor as a public official appointed by 3 different governors and then approved by the full state senate from 3 different governors over 10 years. So,
and in what capacity was that, though?
The CEO and president of the Iowa lottery.
Oh, okay.
And the crazy part is, when you leave, you don't realize two things I learned in that. One, every day you go to work worried that what you say or what the decision you make may be your last, because these positions, as they are with the president, as they are with any governor, are political. If somebody goes out, the entire staff is gone. I was only one of 3 in 10 years directors who left on their own volition without being asked, being told to leave or asked to leave because of a political change or they messed up and got in the press. So that's a pretty crazy deal when it's all said and done.
I would say it's you were talking about systems and checks and balances and oversight, and they're definitely important, but it's almost like in that atmosphere, especially where it's high public view, there's a tendency to take the easy wrong over the hard right. Wouldn't you say?
I think you're probably right. Yet I learned very quickly that the people that do public service, public employees, are some of the most dedicated folks around, and they actually have everything in their heart to do everything right. The ones that are lifers know how to get by, and that's sad. It isn't run like a business. Should it be run like a business? I would say so, because that's how I grew up. But yet you need the stability and the long term. They most really want to do right. It's just that when you have new people coming in at the top, elected officials, but I can't think of any other society that is any better than what we have. And the beauty is, once you're in, if people don't like it, we have elections and things change, and that's good. That's why the United States is what it is.
Absolutely. So the important thing, though, is having these checks and balances. I mean, I've been involved in organizations, not nearly at that level, but I've seen the same things you're talking about. There's these little things that people let slide, and then somebody gets a little bit more access, and then they start to justify in their mind, well, I do this, this, and this. I'll just take a little bit here. And the next thing you know, it's a beast. It just grows and they get busted on something.
It's every state has, usually it's churches, small cities, the business managers there. But schools are pretty open too, especially because there's so much cash. Let's go back to that big sporting event. So the athletic director gets the booster club. Booster club goes into the concession stand. It's additional money anyway. This isn't a tax money.
Yeah.
And the money start flowing, and we need to go get change. Okay, give me 520s, put it in the pocket, go. And then at some point you say, geez, I work so hard tonight. I mean, those are just classic ways. And it isn't black and white. It is gray, but the more policies and the more procedures that people follow, the more trust you have and the least likely you are to lose. I tell this to business managers all the time, or heads, treasurers of the local booster club. You want to keep your job, but more importantly, you want to keep your darn reputation.
You're listening to Rage of the Age. Rage of the Age. Politics, religion, economics, and history with a conservative bend.
I have a question, Ian. So, the selling point for many lotteries when they were being brought back in was the money would fund education.
Mm-hmm.
And there appears, like you said, more spent on the lottery than, and I didn't know this, even more than football. I mean, that's insane in my head. But then we look at our schools that's supposed to be getting this money from the lottery. What happens from all that money at the lottery to your local school finally getting what's supposed to have?
Sure.
Is that money going somewhere else? Is it disappearing? Is it being picked at? I mean, what's happening?
Well, first off, the states run the lotteries, which I think is good. And there are some states that I think are pressured to the money goes to different places, or says it's going to different places and allocated are better than others. But I like the idea that the state runs the lottery, because if you leave it to private or you leave it to organized crime, who ran the numbers on the East Coast for years and years, it isn't fair and honest. And people like to gamble. So it's like any other vice, tax and regulate and make it fair as you do that, and try to give oversight and help to those that abuse it. I think that what happens, again, it's going over the line. So let's talk education. Let's just take a state and say, okay, they're going to start a lottery, and some states give it to scholarships to all high school kids get to go free for a year into college. There are a few states that do that. Or if it goes to education, well, that's pretty cool, and it happens for years. The people who sell the lottery would say that's great, because people believe that, hey, I lost, but I helped some kid get to college. Type deal.
Right.
There isn't a single person that would not rather win than send a kid to college. I'll guarantee it. But when they lose, then they can justify that to the spouse.
Right.
But then a few years later, you hit 2008 and you get an economic downturn. And at that point, the legislature is giving $100,000 to education. What they do is, let's say the total education budget was $1 million before the lottery started. So now that the lottery started, all the money's going to that point. But what they say, well, let's take 50%. Let's just reduce, because they're getting $1.5 million. Let's just take 250,000. So they're still getting $1,250,000. So that's an increase. But we need this 250,000. We'll go over here and spend on other projects that we have going. So the total amount to education stays the same and increases some each year, but it isn't the full amount, because they can say that the money's going to education, but now they can take some of the money from education. Education's still happy because they're getting another core 25% increase, but should it have been 50%? And that's where it started to get mucky after a few years, when legislatures get that. But it still sounds good, especially in Bible Belt states where people believe the lottery is sin. How dare we have a lottery or gambling of any kind? this is a way to justify it coming in that we're going to help the kids. So most do a really good job of taking that money and putting it into good causes. Iowa's been transparent. They take $500,000 or $2 million and give it directly to the Veterans Trust Fund to help for health costs that aren't offset on the national basis. But the rest of it, they just dump in the black hole. I call it the general fund. But that's okay. It's still in general, reduces taxes. But that's how you get to the point that you have. It does go back. It does help. And if you did not have it, your taxes would definitely increase. So some believe it's a tax on the poor because the income, if you spend $1 and you only make 10,000, that's a higher percentage of your income. You spend $1 and you make $1 million. But people are going to gamble. I think it's still the way that it's set up is still a pretty good deal.
Did I hear you right that you're saying the money for education actually increases, even though money might go elsewhere from the lottery fund?
Okay, no, if they say it's going to the education, it goes to education. But so I'm going to give you your education. I'm going to give you $1 million this year. We don't have a lottery. So we're adding the lottery next year, and the lottery is making $500,000, right? Well, we're going to give you that $500,000, but we're only going to give you $750,000 in the general fund this year. So you get 1.2 million, not 1.5 million. It isn't that most over time reduce their total allocation from the general fund to education because they supplemented it with the lottery and made it so that you're getting more from education, but it isn't like you were getting 100% of what you were getting plus the lottery. You're maybe getting 75% plus the lottery, but your total dollars still higher. Did I explain that right? Yeah, can I understand?
So you're saying the support they used to have otherwise, they took it from education.
Take a little bit of that, but not all of it.
But they basically, the government does that a lot too. They they say, "Oh, you're getting funds here, where we're taking this back," and it's
and I don't know if that's bad because if they use the lottery to get the lottery, we're giving it to education, to get it. Everybody seems to benefit. Most people feel that everybody seemed to benefit because the education got 25% more, or some percentage more than they would have had if the lottery wasn't around. And it gave us those dollars they took away, taking it out of the general fund to put in other places. So doesn't everybody benefit? That's the logic that I think they would have.
I think I heard it again. So what you're saying is the lottery did increase what education would get.
Mm-hmm. Lottery definitely gave more. All the money from the lottery went there, but less money went the other way. But the total dollars net to the education because the lottery was around has increased. Great.
I guess maybe I'm echoing frustrations from people in where I live here and in our state and other states I've lived. Seems to have a similar problem. We technically have more money in education because of the lottery, yet the schools get worse. That stuff don't get fixed.
Yeah.
They can't keep teachers. I mean, it's like everything's just slowly decaying. And it's like, wasn't this supposed to help?
and that's the problems. That's one of the big problems is lottery directors have in that because we have no control. If they gave us the schools to run as business people, you run the lottery, it's a pretty big business. We could run that and probably do really well, but we have no say in how the schools spend the money. So it's more of a management problem from either the state or the schools more than it is the lottery, because the lottery is actually bringing more money than ever before to the state. It's how it's allocated and then how it's spent. So the frustration should be, in my belief, should be more toward the management of the schools and the legislature than it is to that. And again, as taxpayers, it's our right and responsibility to speak up on those sort of things.
Well, I definitely agree with you that the state runs the education. So that it starts there. And then, of course, the administrations of the schools and how it's crafted in each state has to be looked at too. But that's just the frustration I think many have had is this money was supposed to be there for the schools, but it don't look like it. But there's more than ever available. What's happened from where it started to the school that's supposed to have it? And that's I don't know, that infuriates me a little bit. And
I think that's a sense of many things in government that our taxes have gone up over the years and how we do it and how is that balanced with what we're getting back for results. And I've got, lots of little things that I believe now that I'm retired, and I can look back at government and say that I wouldn't spend in here or there.
Mhm.
On the other hand, I sure as heck wouldn't live anywhere else.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I love our system. I believe in it. Absolutely. But it's just one of those things that I look at because I hate the pawning off thing that public officials like to do. It's not my fault. It's them. And it's like, that's your responsibility. Deal with
Yeah.
it. Somebody has to know where it's going, but no one knows. It's always someone else. It's almost like we lose accountability when we start doing that. And that's what is frustrating.
We do. We're ruled by the majority, and the
Mhm.
majority gets to decide where the money's spent, and that's why I kind of like the idea that we have split houses and split that.
Mhm.
That's what slows things down a little bit. But point well taken.
You've been involved with all kinds of aspects of business and entrepreneurship and all these things. In addition to the lottery, you ran a zoo, even brought it from a $600,000 deficit to profitability in like the second most visited place in the state. Um,
That's back to government. That's a classic example. The
wow.
zoo was run by the city. There was financial problems. They said we're going to close it. We can't afford to keep anything, that sort of thing. So I got a call from an ex-governor, said, "Hey, we're going to take it over and make it a nonprofit. Would you be interested in seeing if we can get the thing from a business perspective to run?" Well, taking over a entity from the city was pretty easy
Mm.
and pretty easy to turn around. And it's a classic example of just the creativity of trying to figure out, people go to the zoo, especially if you're 2 to 10 years old. So it was losing $600,000, but they were charging $4.95. Who thinks that any zoo is worth going to if you're going to pay $4.95 to get in? So they were subsidizing it with tax money, and of course, then taxes tough to. So over 2 years, I raised the price to $9.95, and I took over the employees, put them on as private rather than as public entity. But we were able then to incent them to say, if we do well, we need people coming through the door. If we do well, you're going to get more money for yourself. You're going to get more money for the animals, for animal care.
Mm.
But they kept saying $9.95. Some people can't afford it. That's easy. We just told everybody at the front desk, if somebody comes in from the inner city or from that can't afford it, they look up and the kids say, "Let's go, Mom." And Mom looks up, "Oh, I don't know whether we can afford this at $9.95. I said, let them in. Just say, "Hey, come over here. Enjoy." And you know what? People coming from Omaha that was paying $29.95 to go to their zoo thought it was a bargain. All of a sudden, we cash flowed it in 6 months, and I gave away more passes to the disadvantaged. Anybody that wanted to get in free basically just said, "Say, I don't know if I can afford it." They were in, and we cash flowed the thing immediately. We raised almost $12 million in that. We knew that kids came and like museums, and this is a problem that cities have when you have all these museums you're supporting nonprofits. You go once when you're a kid, once when you take your kid, once when you take your grandkid. You don't stop every single year. So we look for ways to get millennials in because it was only kids coming to the zoo. So we thought, well, what are millennials like? Booze. So we decided to open it at night with no kids and have Zoo Brew. So you can have a drink, you can listen to a band and see all the animals and have a date and an open park
That's
like that.
interesting. Yeah.
We raised over $250,000 just in beer last year at the zoo by taking that effort. So, it's just the difference. But you've got to be able to protect so that it's open and those kinds of facilities are available for everybody.
The zoo basically was going down because of government management.
No doubt, government management and fiscal need, because it was during the time when the city was having tough financial times, and if you don't put money in marketing, if you don't put money to find, especially revenue, the lottery. Here's an old saying: the lottery. Somebody say, "Oh, you need to cut your marketing because we're tough in the state this year. We need to back you down on your marketing." You don't cut steaks off a milk cow.
Yeah.
Think about that. You're getting all this milk, you're making all this money. You don't cut steaks off a milk cow. And I think that's sometimes where states, if you're going to do a 1% reduction across the board, you don't reduce places that bring you in money. You don't take everybody out of the tax department that process income tax in, because you need the money in. And that's where sometimes with the unions and everything that goes along with that I think governments often falter.
One of the topics you do talk about, because you're a public speaker as well, you travel around, you give keynote addresses all over the place, and you talk about creating an innovative environment sometimes. What are some of the things that you advocate in that makes that creative environment? Because
again, with the state, I think that here's a real simple idea that you can use tomorrow. I went in right away, and as you can tell, I like to talk and I like to give ideas. And so I said, hey, have we tried an animal on this ticket, or should we paint the wall blue? Or, I was given all these ideas. And about 2 weeks later, the entire staff, state of Iowa employees, the management staff were melting down. I could see it in their eyes. And finally, one person raised their hand and said, hey, we can't handle this. And I said, what's up? She says, we have too many things to do. And I said, what do you mean? I said, well, you want us to do this, 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 and this. I said, wait a minute. I'm just trying to give you ideas. I'm not trying to say you have to do everything. They didn't realize that. So we talked through.
Right.
So we came up with something called COT, consider or throw away. And you can try this in your organization, but you got to play by the rules. Here's how it works. When you send out an email, there are 3 things that we decided we would put in that under the subject line. Either action required. That means the boss says you have to do it, so you better do it. Second is FYI, for your information. That means, read it sometime. That's probably 30, 40%, maybe 1% for the action required, 30, 40%. But here's the one, COT. That means consider or throw away. So if I send you an email with COT, that means you can hit delete. You don't even have to, I just want to get it off my chest. And all of a sudden, the stress level went way down. But what we did was create all these new ideas without judgment. And that's creating an innovative environment. It's like, and you go to California, they don't just, people who own a vineyard, they don't just take those grapes and that's all they make it. They go around and look for the best grapes all over. So you need a bushel basket of ideas, not just 1 or 2 ideas to be successful, because you get all that bushel basket together and then you sit down and prioritize all the ideas that you've brainstormed and come up with the 1 or 2 out of 100 that might work. So that's the general concept. Try that, but tell everybody, if I send you something with COT in the subject line, or if we're talking face to face, it means no judgment. You don't send me anything back. You can delete it. You don't have to read it. But if you do, don't send any comments. It's just me giving you an idea.
Yeah, well, I've seen that plenty of times, and I think that's the prevailing attitude in most places, where if a suggestion is given, it's almost received as if it's a command.
You got it.
Something that. But you're like, no, I'm just, and it creates, you're right. It creates this stress. Oh no, we have extra things to do. And it's like, I didn't say do anything, but that's how it's received. And
well, here's what happens. Just like right now, if I could look you in the eye and say, hey, I think you need a new pair of headphones. I'm watching for your reaction, whether your eyes go open, whether you're giving me a dirty look, whatever, you're judging right away, and people look for that judgment. But without judgment, you feel freer to give an idea, because all you're trying to do is help everyone. So consider or toss, COT, try that, but make sure people do not judge. And if they do, just say, hey, this isn't for judgment, do that. But think about telling your employees hear something from you. I always say, if the king says, oh, poop, everybody heads for the bathroom, because they think it's a command. No, it's the opposite. And vice versa. If the receptionist has a good idea, if they can send it without, because they're worried about, is the boss going to think weird of me that we need to do chair up here because it's about to break and a customer is going to fall off and sue us. If I could just send that and not care about what anybody will say back to me, that's a much more open and innovative environment.
I like the idea of pre-labeling your announcement, like putting out ahead of time, this is what this is, to put it in the right category for them to receive. I remember my time in the Army, the idea was, if the officer made a suggestion, it wasn't a suggestion. It was, he wanted you to do it. So them making suggestions it kind of worked weird. But there was times where we would have after action reports when we would do our operations. And for the longest time, we were told, you say, this is just for us to learn and everyone to speak and to learn our lessons. And this isn't like we're going to do these things, not do these things. The stage was set ahead of time, and you would have some pretty good discussions of everyone involved over, what part you had to play and why this didn't work. And we were being hemmed in or couldn't do what we needed to do because of what was happening over here. And that would bring forth a lot of great ideas and feedback for what's going on. But that won't happen if everybody believes they can't freely speak. And I think it's important to put out ahead of time, this is what we're talking about, and it don't mean anything. That's a good thing to have.
It's the environment. You're saying exactly
Yes.
right. Think about that. Back to the receptionist. Everybody has suggestion boxes in the old days. So she wants to talk about that chair being broke or stained in the front. She or he writes down the comment, puts it in the suggestion box, and then what happened? Well, it may go to somebody who gives it to somebody else, checks with accounting, checks with this, checks with that.
Right.
That may take 2 weeks. In the meantime, that person is down in the cafeteria. Yeah, I gave my idea to the management. They never said anything. Well, if she knows she's not going to get any response, but she knows it's going to be read, then we put all of those ideas back to that bushel basket of grapes. We put those ideas together, and then a group of people together prioritizes, hey, which one of all of these different ideas, let's prioritize the top. So the accounting can say, it costs too much. Legal can say that could cost us, could get sued. When it's all said and done, the best ideas will rise to the top, and the group will think we all had a part in this decision, and then it's going to be successful.
Yeah, I remember the suggestion boxes, and it became something of a bit of humor or something viewed as ridiculous. Like, well, I got a suggestion for you. Put in. It's like everybody thought it wasn't going to be worth anything anyway, and it was just, but it's there, so everybody would just joke with it or something.
Yeah, I can think of some good ones we can put in for sure.
Yeah, it didn't accomplish its purpose. I mean, it was. But I think that's another important consideration, though. I guess from the management perspective, because the workers may have a view. Management, I think, at times will put things out like a suggestion box so that people can feel like they can give a suggestion, but they use that box as a buffer between them and everybody else, so they don't have to deal with the suggestions. Right?
Yeah, that definitely is a feeling, and that's why you got to go back to action required. If the person in the front, if you really want to get something open and make sure somebody reads it, you put action required. But on the other hand, if you put the consider or throw away, it gives you some flexibility. You don't feel guilty because, you may or may not like it, but I don't want to disappoint anybody within my organization as the CEO and president. I want to be responsive, and if you open that line of communications, that's how you create the innovative environment.
Because innovation comes from ideas and considerations, and like you said, the best rising to the top, right?
Absolutely.
Terry, it's been a real joy speaking with you today. I appreciate having you for the program.
And you haven't called me a son of a rich yet. That's my final joke of the day. That's my final joke of the day. Thank you very much, Phil.
You're listening to Rage of the Age. Rage of the Age. Politics, religion, economics, and history with a conservative bend.
Welcome to the essay segment, and I want to talk today about something that's almost never really discussed. State and local government. It almost seems boring. It almost seems as if it's really non-existent. It's kind of like this sideshow. It's just over here, and it's no one really pays attention to it, but local and state government are very important to how things run in our country. The unfortunate reality is that a lot of people will vote once every 4 years only because it's a presidential election. And even then, they will just vote for like the president with no care for any other position that is on the ballot and not vote for it. And this is kind of disturbing because here's the reality. A lot of things that affect you directly and how things are going to run end up being decided by local and state officials, not the federal government. Most things that are ran in your state are ran by your state. Even if there is federal money going to those programs, it is still in the end the state that runs those programs. The biggest example, of course, is public education. You can get all the federal money in the world for your schools, But in the end, it's the state that decides how that money gets spent, or even if it gets spent sometimes. The decisions that are being made about our schools are being made at the state level, not in Washington. But it seems that no one cares until it's 4 years later to even make a move to fix anything about who we vote into our positions. And it's not just the public education. Things like food stamps and Medicare and Medicaid, all these things are managed at state levels. Your local levels, they manage certain things concerning zoning and other things that affect you directly, but many Americans have no idea what's going on in their own neighborhood. But for some reason, we come out of the woodwork every 4 years to cast a vote as if we're voting in a king that makes a decision for everybody, and that is not what this country is based upon, and should never be based upon the idea that we basically elect a dictator every 4 years. But that's what it seems that we have come to. From the very beginning, it has always been intended that we rule ourselves. We govern ourselves locally and through the states. And that is meant to give us more of a closer tie to our representatives. We don't have to go to Washington and beg some dictator somewhere, hey, make them do this and do this for me and solve this policy for me, and then go through that fight they go through up there. At our local level, we should be involved and have the power to deal with it. But honestly, how many know who ran for like their House representatives during this election? How many knew who was going to be their county commissioners? How many know who the mayor was going to be and what they stand for, what they've done and what they've been involved with and what they're doing with the money that they've been raising? Are they going to raise taxes? Are they going to lower them? Are they going to help the schools or have they mismanaged the money? I mean, no one knows. And this is at a local level, and that's what's really disturbing. But the disturbing thing is we somehow have this idea that we will blame Washington, when the truth is a lot of it is done in our own backyard while we're blindfolded. That if we took off the blindfold and held officials accountable in our own backyard, that would probably emphasize far greater change and increase in efficiency and improvement in government than would ever do from Washington. Washington caters to the news cycle. It caters to, imagery and all this insanity that goes up there. It's almost like this insane circus. But the state level, we can direct things that's within a greater sphere of our control. But most people have no idea, even who their lieutenant governor is. They have no idea who's running the treasury. They don't know what the budget looks like for the state, and they don't care. But they'll be the biggest complainer of what's going on around them. I don't understand. We are losing our soul, the soul of this nation, because we think some magic brainiac somewhere at some bureaucratic office is supposed to fix everything for us and just leave us alone and we ain't got to deal with it. If we don't, as people, as United States citizens, step up and start running the things ourselves the way it was meant to be, where we go through our local and state officials and hold them accountable and bring the government to some sense of order and leave it to someone else to go fix it from somewhere else afar, we have sold our soul. We have purposely given up our republic. What we're saying is we want a tyrant who's going to promise us what we want, that will use no restraint to get it, and just give it to us. But of course, that always comes with a price. Have we truly forgotten what price that really is? This will be a short essay today, but it's one I've been thinking about for quite a bit. There are literally people who went to the ballot box this year and they voted just for the president, but didn't even bother to check any other name because they didn't know who it was. And their vote could have made a difference in their state and local levels. It could have affected something. But instead, what happens is cronyism. These certain arrangements are made at the local and state levels where most people are kind of pre-picked before they get there. Why? Because they know no one's going to vote and change it otherwise. That needs to change. And we, as a nation, need to re-grab our soul again.
You've been listening to Rage of the Age. If you loved today's podcast, make sure to leave a review on the media you're listening through. Secure future episodes by heading over to rageoftheage.com and clicking the RSS feed button. Until next time, this has been Rage of the Age.